We had some bad luck. My name's Sean, and in this video, we are moving on to our ICF foundation. Our foundation walls are going to be 9 feet tall, and they're going to be made out of these Nudura ICF blocks, which stands for insulated concrete forms. These blocks for this brand are 18 inches tall by 8 feet wide, and in this case, I'm doing an 8-inch wide concrete foundation. So the center for the 8 inches of concrete is surrounded by 2 5/8 thick foam on both sides. Our first step is going to be redoing our layout at the front corner here so we can actually see a line where these ICFs are going to go. We'll start from our corners, build our corners up, and then meet in the middle of each wall for a common seam. We also have a lot of cleanup to do with the footers, so let's get going. So we're up here in the front corner of the house where we've originally picked our first arbitrary point for the footer. So we're going to be doing the same thing for the ICF. So if you remember, our footers are 20 inches wide. Our ICF blocks are just over 13 inches wide. They're 13 1/4 outside to outside. So subtracting that from both sides, assuming this is a perfect footer, we would have 20 inches minus 13 1/4, and then we divide that by 2 so our spacing is even on the front and back, and we end up with 3 3/8 of an inch from the outside of the concrete here. So I'm going to measure in 3 3/8 this way, 3 3/8 from this corner, and that will be our initial start point. So I'm going to get this point set, and then we'll square everything for the foundation off of that point, just like we did with the footer. All right, so we're going to do this. We're just going to measure in 3 3/8. A little off there. 3 3/8 this way. Okay, and this intersection point is going to be our corner. So let's drill a quick hole here. There's just a piece of copper wire left over. And here's our starting point. So this is a good set point now. So we'll pull all of our measurements off this. So we just spent the last couple hours finishing our layout, kind of getting everything back to where it needs to be for our exterior of our foundation. So we started getting our string lines up, and we plumbed down to get our corners. We have all of our exterior now chalk lined. So we used a more permanent, like level 4 chalk line around the whole perimeter. So we have our corners marked with masonry nails, and then chalk lines everywhere else. Since then, we've also opened up a couple of our packs of Nudura. So we have our 8-foot blocks here, and it's nice how they ship these. They're flat, and then you just open them up. These inner webs actually just swivel up, so it saves a lot of space for shipping. And if we come over here to our drop footer, this was kind of the main area we've been working today. So our drop footer is at 34 1/2 inches. So 34 1/2 inches, about 34 to 34 1/2 inches is what we're shooting for. And that's basically 2 courses of this ICF, because these are 18 inches tall. So we took some time to go down the house and actually cut our first course down there 1 3/4 inches off. So we cut 1 3/4 inches off the bottom of that first course. So that way our second course is going to align hopefully perfectly with the course on this upper footer. So as we build our first 2 courses up, the third course will tie directly into this top footer, and we won't have to take any more height off of these blocks. They'll just be the length cuts for our common seams. So have some blocks going in now, just kind of getting staged. We're going to put all of our corners in first, and then we'll start working through the middle of the corners and leveling as we go. We'll try to get these 2 courses on first, and then I'll go through and we'll shoot everything with a transit, make sure everything's level and on plane. And then of course in the corners too, I've been considering whether or not I should put a few 2x4s in here, so I'm probably going to try to put some 2x4s in just to grab some extra support for those corners, since those seem to be the possible blowout points during the actual pour. So we're gonna get some of these corners in, we'll get those set, and then I'll catch back up with you guys. Well, I wanted to stop and make a quick update for the end of the day here. We made it a lot farther than where I expected to be today, so big thanks to everyone who helped out with these first 2 courses in our drop footer. It really made it a lot easier and smoother with more hands here. So we have 2 courses pretty much all the way in on our drop footer, all the way around. We left off one opening here for a common seam, just so I can be able to jump in and out for now. And a lot of stopping and thinking, so I didn't get a lot of footage, but just wanted to make a quick update now. So this whole drop footer, if you remember, I said we have our full 18-inch block on the top. Our drop footer from the top of this footer to the top of our drop footer is 34 inches, roughly 34 to 34 and a half. So that first course, it's not a full 18-inch tall block. I had to cut off 1 3/4 inches and then put a full 18-inch block on top, and that left us pretty much flush with the top here. So now the next course that goes on the top part of our footer will actually be able to lock into that, and I can either shim up the bottom here to meet that, or I can even shim the bottom of the top here. So that was a huge start to our foundation here. I still need to put a transit on this wall that we just finished, get everything leveled, put some shims under there and actually glue it down. But for the most part, we hit all of our corners within about 1/8 of an inch. All the dimensions are looking pretty good. And I mean, I'm just generally happy with how it's coming out. Like, it went really well, went really smoothly today. We went through less materials than I expected because we were able to use a lot of stuff. I thought we were going to have common seams where we would have to cut either both sides of one block or 2 blocks, but it worked out well to where as long as we were cutting, as long as our seam came on a 2-inch increment of these blocks, we were able to cut along one of these factory seams. These are 2-inch increments, which means if you cut on one of these seams, your blocks, your nubs will still align and you won't have to have a common seam. So for this wall, I came down and like this is a cut block down here, but since it's on this seam, the nubs were still able to align. This is a cut block, but again, the nubs were aligned because I was able to cut on the seam. The only place we actually had a common seam where it landed on a half dimension is this one right here. So this block here, we came from this corner, worked our way this way with a full block, and then this one on the left had to be cut to a half dimension. So this is a common seam. We'll have this all the way up. This is also where my door is going to be. So we'll only have a common seam for the top 3 courses above the door. I don't know if having the common seam above the door is necessarily a bad thing at this point, but we'll find out. So really good day. Going to be working on this throughout the week and hopefully make some better progress on the rest of the walls this weekend. I also have some doors and windows to start cutting out as we get higher, but for now we have our blocks mostly in. And the other thing is I'm getting good experience for how to cut these, what makes things easier, and how to get them together the best way possible. One last thing, we do have a 1/2-inch rebar in our first course. We're gonna have a 1/2-inch piece of rebar in each course, alternating outside, inside, outside, inside. And of course our 3/4 inch vertical bar, which once we have almost all the blocks up, I will drop in a few more vertical 3/4 bar just for some resistance to bending and more structural support for the walls. But as you can see, it's getting to be dusk here, so that's it for me for the weekend, and I will catch up with you guys next time when we get a chance to work on this again. All right guys, we are back for day 2 here on these ICFs. And if you remember, we got the first 2 courses up and we had a few seams that went together. We had one common seam in the middle of our wall here, but we also had our 2 seams at this wall and this wall that we had line up with the vertical indentation on the 2-inch centers of the ICF, so they actually worked out without the common seam. But I was looking into this more after we went home for the night and leading up to this day here, and I made a mistake, so I wanted to make sure I pointed this out because this is probably one of the worst mistakes you can make, and luckily we caught it on the first course here. So the elusive common seam here has been one of the hardest things to kind of grasp the concept of. So if you remember, we have these webs inside these ICFs. These are the plastic webs. These give your ICF pretty much all of its strength. They coordinate with these little like DNA looking symbols here on the outside. Also the Nudura symbol is showing where those webs are too. So what you want is you want all of these webs from bottom to top to line up vertically. That way your Duralock system, which are these little clips here that I did not notice before. I don't know if I can get a shot of that. These little tiny clips here are what hold your vertical forms in that little tooth there. So that's why these clips have to line up the whole way. And Nudura specifies that these are 8 inches on center, and if you have more than 8 inches on center, you need strapping. My mistake was that for this block that we cut to fit, you can see my symbols here are off 2 inches. So this one here, it's hard to get down to that angle, but this one here is here, and then the next one is here and here. And what that does is if you look straight down, we have our webbing here, 2 inches to the right webbing here, 2 inch here, 2 inches of webbing here. So this top form is not clicked in to the bottom. The only thing that it's holding it is the foam tabs. So this block's gonna have to be removed, and I'm gonna have to adjust it to where the tabs line up, even if I have to use 2 pieces. And we did something similar on this side, but since we didn't do that side properly, we ended up getting luckier on this side, and we lined these up without paying attention to it. So on this side, we have our factory edge over here, and you can see our symbols line up the whole way down, until we get to this point, because we cut this block on the left before. So we have this plastic webbing and this plastic webbing that are 2 inches off. So just these two are off. Now, if I understand this right, Nudura says that you can basically be off one web and you just have to use the strapping. So as long as we get those webbings to line up, even if we're off one web at the end, like the final web, I think we'll be okay. But we need to maintain less than an 8 inch gap. And obviously this one's 10 inches now. So we would need strapping here. So we need to get this one adjusted. Not too bad. Like I said, I'm glad to have caught it now, because we only have to adjust this block, that one block over there. And then of course, I'm just gonna go through, double check all these other ones, because this block here looks like it's off a little bit. So these two here, and then everything on our front wall, since we ended up needing the common seam, is lining up well. And then even our common seam, we are less than the 4 inches. And of course we'll have the strapping across there. Same thing on this side. Looks like just this block is off and that one there. So good thing to catch it now, but something to keep in mind for you guys. Just make sure those verticals always line up, even if you have to cut some extra blocks and put them in there. So I'm gonna get these adjusted, and then we'll be starting on our course up top here that actually goes on our upper footing here. So this is how it was originally. This is how I'm going to mitigate it. This piece right here that actually was aligned is coming out. So it had the proper line up with the webbing. This piece, these two did not align. They were off by 2 inches. So I cut this form. This was a full piece. I cut this one at my common splice down there at the bottom. And then this 16-inch piece comes out. And what I should have done originally was align myself with that bottom splice. And then I take another full piece, and I could measure this too. But take my full piece, line it up, and then this seam right here, this indented cut line, is where I cut. Now that doesn't necessarily have to be on this indented cut line. My dimensions just happen to fall on this. since I'm doing a common splice on this wall now, instead of the overlap thing that I was trying to figure out, this could be any cut, whether it falls in the middle of these cut lines or not. But mine just happens to fall on this cut line. So I'll mark that. And now with this cut line, so mine just happens to fall on this cut line here. And of course, since my cut line is here, my closest web is way over here. Since this is 8 inches, this is probably 6 inches away. Since this web is 6 inches away, and then our next web over there is 2 inches away, this end of this form needs reinforcement. So you can either use the fiber tape like Nudura calls out, or in my case, I'll just use some 2x4 strapping across the inside and outside. But since I'm cutting here and I'm more than 4 inches away from this web, this will need a little bit extra support, even though it's common seam, so it's getting extra support anyway. But that's the method I'm going with. This will replace basically what I was doing before, and hopefully I'll still be able to use some of those other little pieces for stuff around here, but I do have some extra blocks. So I'm going to get that done with all the sides here. So now I will have 3 common seams in this back. One on my long wall, probably one on my short walls too, actually, and then middle in each one. So more about what I was expecting, a common seam in each wall going all the way from the bottom to the top. So now with this cut to 58 inches, we have our factory edge here on this side. We have our cut side over here against our common seam. And this should just drop right in. And click just like that. Nice solid click. Feels nice. And so with this method, we have our common seam starting at the bottom, coming up to the second course. These two webs are more than 8 inches apart because they're both cut. So this needs strapping, not only because it's common seam, but because these webs are unsupported for too far. But now, the more importantly, hopefully it comes up on camera with the lighting, we have our web on the bottom course. The web goes all the way up. The web goes all the way up. And if you look down, it's perfectly aligned all the way across. Every web has a mate. And of course, as a secondary thing, these webs are also for drywall and stuff. So, you know, now a drywall person can just go straight up or down that seam without having to worry about staggering left and right, or anything like that, anything weird. So these are all lined up well now. That worked out well. One other thing I forgot to mention was I have the form clips, which actually clip these in, like find a joint here, a factory joint. They'll clip these in from here to here just to hold the corners in. So the whole bottom course is going to get clips on both sides, top and bottom. And then as I work my way up, every corner will get clips. And then the top course, I'll just use up whatever I have left. So with that said, now we have a good process to kind of follow the whole way up the wall. So let's just get some of these up. Well guys, about an hour later, I have these all fixed now. I'm way more comfortable with how they are set up now. So just take a quick look at that. So in our corner, we don't have any common seam because we actually run it into the step footer here. But again, the first wall we looked at, we now have a common seam. Just marked it out with some red X's or black X's, so that way I remember to put my strapping across there, front and back. We also came around this side, have our common seam in the middle here, just like we knew we were going to have one here in our 20-foot wall. I have one here in this short 6-foot wall. So, and also you can see, just like every other wall, all of our lines for our webs, those little figure eights, vertically aligned perfectly. and even our last wall here. All of our symbols line up. We have one common seam here, and that just means looking straight down, we are all lined up. Also, every corner got 4 of these on each side, so 8 total. These are the clips that hold it together. So I should have been putting these in as I went, but I forgot. So each corner gets top and bottom down there, probably hard to see. So each corner, top and bottom. Each course, all the way up to the top, I'll have 8 of these ties on each corner just to kind of hold it together. Because everything I see online says your corners are pretty much your most risky point for blowouts. So have these all fixed now. I'm pretty confident with this second course on here. So my next step, I'm going to do my third course and land on top of my upper footing here. And then once I get this full course in, I'll go back. I will shoot every point here with the transit, get this bottom wall and basically the 3 courses perfectly level and perfectly, I guess, pitched the right way, inside and outside. We'll pull some measurements, make sure everything's square and looking good. And then once that's perfect, we will spray foam down the bottom course, get it locked in, and we should be pretty quick just to get the last few courses up to give us a 9-foot basement here. Well, we got our first course down on our main footer up here. Looks like I'm gonna have to shim up a little bit of the bottom, not too much, so nothing crazy. There's just a little bit to come up to let these mate together a little bit better. And then I have same thing at the bottom. I have a common splice that's going to be here. I have my ties in each corner. I had some unique setup with my 3-foot bump out here. So the 3-foot bump out, my common seam actually ends up in the corner piece, which isn't ideal, but I don't think that's too bad. So I'll just have a splice from the edge here over basically, and that's really all you could do to fit in this spot. And since I had to cut the last 2 inches off this block, these are now 6-inch spacing instead of 8. So not a big deal. I'll throw a zip tie on these, and I'll also have it spliced on the outside, so there'll be plenty of support there on that corner. And since this is a symmetric house, basically had the same symmetry on this side. So another common splice in the middle of this wall and one common splice in the middle of this wall. And here's the detail for that drop footer. I think, like I said before, I plan this to be 35 or slightly less than 36 inches. That way I could trim off the first block down there on the drop footer, and I'll shim it up to meet to where those actually seat together nicely. See, there's a small gap in there just because I still have to raise it up. By the time I get that raised up and get the hole back here to the same height, it should lock in pretty nicely. And even if there is a 3/8 to 1/2 inch gap on the top and I have to shim that too, that's just something easy. I could just foam down and fill that in. The only other thing I'm contending with on this course is I have a man door here. So I have my center point of the door and then just where I'm going to cut the foam out. I'm going to leave it in for now until I get everything squared up and level just for rigidity. But I have a 36-inch door going in here, and it'll be somewhere in this drawing. So I did a 40-inch wide cutout because a 36-inch man door needs a 38-inch rough opening width-wise. So my 38-inch rough opening, plus I'm gonna have 3/4 inch plywood on each side as my jam for the holding the concrete back whenever I pour the foundation. So that'll stay in. So that would be 39.5 inches total, adding the 3/4 inch plywood on both sides plus a 38-inch rough open. And then I gave myself a little 1/2 inch there, just as it's easier to throw a couple extra shims in there than be cutting concrete later on. So 40-inch wide opening for a 36-inch door. I'll have a couple more doors and windows as we go up, but for now things are looking really good. So I can either get the transit out and start grading this, but it looks like some rain clouds just started coming in, so I might have to take a break for that. I could bend the rebar for this course since I don't have the rebar in yet for this third course, but I think if I do that, then it might make it a little bit more difficult to actually grade and level it. So I think I'm going to wait for this rain to pass. Looks like we have about an hour of 20 to 30% chance of rain. So wait for this to pass, and then we'll get this thing leveled up and hopefully get some rebar in tonight, have this course done. If we can get this course done tonight, then by the next time I get a good day to work on this, we should be moving pretty quickly after everything's locked in place and pretty much set to where it is. And of course I need to still pull some square measurements and stuff too. So the goal with the transit is to get this entire course, the top of this third course from the bottom, first course from the top here, all at the same height. So even all the way around. And as I'm walking around shooting grades at the top of the dimples here, you see I'm very close. Fast beat means it needs to go up a hair. Slow beat means it has to go down a hair. Most of this foundation is within about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So that's great. I do have one bad spot right in here because the footer must have come up a little bit. You can see how much my board is bowed right here. I have to either cut some out on this one, or I can shim everything up to meet this height. But this ended up being the highest point of my foundation, so it makes the most sense to either shim everything to this height or trim this down a little bit and shim everything after that. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit between getting our heights and having everything level and also squaring up the foundation. So I think that'll be a little bit of fine tuning with both until we get things perfect. But for now, I'm going to look at see just what's causing this little hump here in the footer on our piece in front of me, and then we'll start shimming. So here's our block that was a little bit higher, and after looking at this, I saw that our footer had actually had a little hump in it. So all I had to do was I cut out that little part on this. So I just have, like, in the middle of this block, there's a little almost like bridge or rainbow shape I cut out, just a subtle, only about 1/2 inch, but that allowed it to kind of seat properly. So now on both sides, we have good heights. Actually needs to come up slightly, which is what we were going for. That way we can shim everything to height. So just to make it easy to demonstrate, I will show you up here what I'm going to do with these shims rather than down in the drop footer. But basically, I'm going to have the transit sitting on top, and I will let it beep until I get a solid tone. I'll put some shims underneath to raise it up to whatever I need to get that solid tone, meaning that I'm at grade. And then I'll have just standard wood shims like you would use for a door. And then I'll spray foam a little bit on each side of the shims. And then once the spray foam sets up, I will remove the shims, and it should stay at its own grade. And then after everything is kind of spot foamed to stay in place, I'll come back and I'll just spray foam all the gaps underneath and make sure everything's really tight and adhered to the footer. Well, I have the beeping off right now for the transit receiver, but being 3 courses up for this drop footer, it's very difficult to hold this steady and shim at the same time. So just made up this quick little jig here, and I'm just going to set this right on top of my foundation. And as long as the dimples are pretty reasonable, some of these are pushed down a little bit, but for the most part they're good. I can watch this, or I can even have the sound on, and as I shim it up, we'll be able to hear that indicator, and this will just sit right on top of my foundation here while I shim from the bottom. All right, so we'll do this first one together, and then I'll just run around and do the rest because it's difficult to see. But these, like I said, these are just standard door shims like you'd use for shimming outdoors. We have our shim mostly all the way in. Like I said, once I get it foamed down and secured, then I'll just pull that out, and I'll probably just put in a shim like maybe every 4 or 5 feet, depending on what it needs to get to the level. All right, let's go do this whole perimeter, and then we should be able to get our corners and our final dimensions. Well, we've been making some great progress this morning, and I was able to go around and actually get everything leveled, and we are now level all the way across. I would say within about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And then you can see on this side, I started on the outside to level the overall height, and then of course it might have been leaning in slightly, about 1/2 inch to 3/8 of an inch. So then I came on the inside, and I just have some shims on the inside to level it front to back or inside to outside, however you want to think about that. So now our forms are level to the same plane, and they're level inside to outside as close as I'm comfortable getting it. I also threw in this stiffener. So Nudura makes this stiffener for the first course and second course. They, I think, recommend it for, but this is, since this is technically my first course, if you look at the top and where I'll be squaring everything, I'm gonna have one in this course, and then I'll put another set in my very top course to try to keep everything straight and aligned at the very top of the wall too. But for now that everything is shimmed and level, we are going to go around. I'm going to pull all my corners, like this outside bump out, all these bump outs. I'm going to pull all my measurements again. We'll double check everything, and then we're going to put in some 2x4s in all the inside and outside corners. That way it just gives it a little bit more support, and it actually holds the form in place, and then we'll foam everything down. So that'll be the next step. Once the foam sets, we should be pretty quick to just start stacking blocks up. We have a couple doors and windows to think about whenever we're going up, so there'll be some unique rebar layouts with that. Nudura specifies that layout, so we'll show that when we get to that. But for now, let's get these walls measured up, double check everything, and get some foam down. All right, so we just went around and measured all the corners. Everything is right on within about 1/8 of an inch or so, so I'm perfectly happy with that. Now that we have everything where we need it to be, I'm just gonna lock in these corners. And this is definitely not a necessary step, but I think it's just good practice. So we're gonna take a 2x4 and just put them on each corner. And that'll just lock in these corners. To do this, you can either use Tapcons, or in this case, I have this ram set. So this just uses a 22 caliber shell to fire a nail into the concrete. And I'll just cut these off after we pour. There we go. So this is what I don't want to happen. I'll try one more. I think this one's just a little bit close to the edge. Yeah, that'll work. All right. So we have 12 corners, inside and outside. Well guys, everything's looking really good on these walls now. We just got everything remeasured again, just to make sure we were perfectly aligned with where we need to be after we did the corners. And we have everything spray foamed down now. So I went with this Great Stuff window and door, just because it doesn't have any bowing or like the low expansion pressure. Not the greatest product ever, kind of a pain to use, but got the job done. I need a couple more cans because we were only able to do the outside so far. And I kind of just did like a stitch weld for most of the bottom here. And I was doing the full perimeter. I believe Nudura recommends you could just do like a spot weld all the way around, but I'm just gonna do the whole thing, try to avoid any issues the best I can. So doing the whole thing, but I was running out of foam and I wanted to get this locked in. So just did some spot welding around the front. Still need to do the whole inside, which is why I need probably about 4 to 5 more cans. So the 4 cans I have now did like 80% of the exterior. So once this sets up, because it's still a little bit tacky, it should kind of weld or lock the whole foundation down to the concrete of the footer. Again, we have our corners. I ram set in with nails, concrete nails there on every corner, inside and out, and on our drop footers. So that shouldn't be able to go anywhere. Those are locked in place. And we're gonna give this about 15 to 20 more minutes to set up a little bit, and then we're just gonna be back to stacking. So now that this first course is exactly where we want it to be, level, all the dimensions are within our tolerance, and set in place with the foam, we just have to stack now. So this should be a lot quicker to get these stacks up now, and we'll just have to cut out for windows and doors after that. Well guys, that wraps things up for tonight. So we were able to get another course on, which is great. And I just got all the rebar put in. I also laid out this door here for the back. We're gonna have some stairs coming down in for some access to the back of the basement here. I did end up having this vertical piece of rebar come up right in my doorway. Didn't account for that, so I'll have to cut that off. But other than that, everything's looking really good. We have some pretty straight walls. We'll still have to plumb them up whenever we get the braces on, and things are looking really good. The foam at the bottom here really hardened up, and it's really holding well. So you can see a little wavy, but by the time we get to the top course and we put some whalers on it, get everything plumbed up with the braces, things will be looking really good. So we're gonna be able to go up maybe one more course before I need to have the braces. And unfortunately, when I ordered the forms, they rent the braces and they didn't have the 9-foot available. So hopefully those will be in this week. And once I get the braces in, we'll be able to stack out up to 6 courses on our upper footer here. And we'll be at 8 courses for 12 foot from our drop footer up. But things are looking really good. We have our other door cut out. So when we pour the floor will actually come over 4 inches thick, and this will be the bottom of our floor. So it'll be concrete 4 inches above this. So this is our doorway, and we'll have that man door, another man door in the back corner, and then our 6-foot wide French doors here in the front. Also have to remember to do some sleeves for spigots and outlets, because I won't be able to run any electrical or my plumbing through the wall once it's poured without core drilling, so I really don't want to deal with that. Also, any lights around my man doors, like sconce lights, have to sleeve those. And of course, your utilities, so sewage out, water in, stuff like that will all have to be sleeved in there now. Once I get the walls up, I'll put those in. But for now, I think we're wrapping things up. So I'll catch up with you guys next time when hopefully we can finish out these last few stacks. It's been a new day, and been slowly getting these courses up one at a time, just in the evenings, but we're finally on to the braces now. So I have 2 braces kind of mocked up here to show how these go on, and I have marks all around the perimeter for where each of the braces are going. The top footer is getting 8-foot braces because we're going up 6 courses, and the bottom drop footer is going up 12 courses, so it's getting 12-foot braces. So looking at one of our full brace setups, we have 3 courses up. So Nudura recommends after 3 courses you put the braces on, just because it is kind of hard to get like another course up here just by reaching. So we have the unistrut looking brace itself held in with number 10 3-inch screws. That way it can go through our 2 5/8 foam and get full holding power on that plastic web in there. Then our braces go on for the scaffold or our planks. So these just get held in with either a little pin they give you, or these, in this case, we just have some bolts, probably maybe 1/2-inch bolts. So this brace comes down to the ground. We have a standard 2-foot concrete stake holding that in. And then this turnbuckle, you can just turn it left or right to take the wall in or out. And the midpoint is indicated by this dimple right here. So this dimple is halfway of your travel both ways. So we'll set it up not quite plumb. We actually want the wall leaning back onto itself a little bit, so back onto the braces. That way, as the concrete fills up, the weight of the wall will push back on the braces. It's a lot easier to push a wall away from you than pull it with the strength of the screws. And so this is just another one where I have just the brace put on so far. So it comes up, we have these number 10 3-inch screws with a flat pan head on them. That way each course gets a screw, and that head is wide enough to take up all the space in there. Hopefully you can see that. And then of course you want it to be able to slide. So if I take this brace, I can actually slide it on the screw like that. That way as you're taking the wall in and out, it's able to slide. It's kind of like putting on a vinyl soffit or vinyl siding. So we have to get the rest of these braces up. As you can see, I have one on each side of windows and doors, and then every 64 inches or 8 webs in between there. So my B's are for a brace. In the corners, I come in 3 webs on one corner, 4 webs on the other corner. That's recommended by Nudura just so the planks don't overlap. So there's a half web in the middle. So coming over from that, you have 1, 2, 3 this way. Half web in the corner, 1, 2, 3, 4. My B for that is just my window drawing up there. So B for brace. So 3 webs on this side, 4 webs on this side, and then supposedly the planks won't interfere with each other or overlap. I don't think it's a big deal if they overlap, but in some cases that might be. Of course, I have my window to cut out here. So I have a brace over here. It might be better to be a little bit closer to my window, so I could move it 1 over and just have it be an extra web away from the corner. And then of course on this side I have a brace on this side of the window, and then just moving around, brace on the outside of this corner, no brace in here, brace in the middle of my wall here, and then I'll just overlap the planks on my outside corner here. Same thing with the inside. Might just have to show how that detail is going to be, because I was only given 20 8-foot braces and 16 12-foot braces. So I kind of have to make do with the rental that I got from the supply company. So if I can make it work with what I have, that's good. If not, I might have to ask them for a couple more braces. Window here, a 4.0 window. So brace on that side, brace on this side, and then a door, a 3.0 door. I think just 1 brace in the middle there is fine. Brace on the opposite side of that door. Also for my windows and doors, just want to go through the buck real quick. So I have this door. This is going to be a 3.0 door, so 36 inches wide. For doors, rough opening is 2 inches wider, so a 38-inch rough open. But then how I'm going to do my bucks is it's going to be a 2x4 with a piece of 3/4 inch plywood nailed to it or screwed to it. So that's another 4 and 4.5 inches total for both sides. So my cutout, my overall width here for this cutout is 42.5. And then that'll give me a 38-inch rough open for a 36-inch door. Windows are a little bit different. So I have a 4.0 window, which is 48 inch. So rough opening for a window is a 1/2 inch extra, so 48-inch rough opening. But then I add my 4.5 inches for a 2x4 on each side, and then a 3/4 inch plywood on each side. So that gives me a 53-inch wide cut. So from this line to this line is 53 inches. And I'll go through all the rebar schedule and how we're gonna do all the lintel stuff like that, because they have lintel tables for all those. So just a couple windows, a couple doors to get through. But for now, we're gonna get the rest of these braces up, and then I'll catch up with you guys after that. Well, here we are. We've had the braces up. I had to fight a few things. I had unique corners to deal with, but this is what I came up with. I used 2x10 by 16s for the scaffold decking here. And the reason I went with 2x10s is my footers for the garage and the porch are gonna be 10 inches thick, so I'll be able to repurpose these for the footers of the garage and the porch. The braces themselves are about 20 inches wide, so you could go with maybe 2x10s side by side, or maybe something else. But I think a 2x10 is plenty of width as long as you're paying attention. You can also put railings up on these if you need to, but in our case, I think the 2x10 is gonna be enough. Just gonna have to watch your step when you're up here and actually really be paying attention, because it's pretty easy to get tripped up by one of these corners. Since my walls on the 6-foot and 3-foot side in the front are kind of short, I was able to get one brace in the middle, but it's pretty close to where the actual splice is going to be. So I wasn't able to get a brace on the corner, so I need to grab a couple 2x4s or 2x6 to actually brace this corner here so it doesn't flex when we walk on it. Everything else is pretty secure. I have 2 extra 8-foot braces, and the only other thing that worries me is my 6-foot wide doorway. I'm not sure if I should have a brace in the middle of that. The install guide just calls for a brace on each side of windows and doors, and every 5'6" on center after that, so 8 webs. So here's my 6-foot wall, an example of something I made a mistake on originally. I wanted the brace here based on my 3 out from each corner, 4 out from each corner. Where the B is was my brace, where the B is was my brace. Since I was using 2x4s as my cross bracing for my common seam, I didn't have long enough screws to go through the thickness of the brace, the alignment system, the 1.5 inch 2x4, and then into the webs. So I moved this one over, but when I had it originally on the B, this and this interfered with each other. You can see how it sticks out just a little bit proud. So I had to move it over. No big deal, but you know, when you have to do that after it's a hot day and you're moving these 12-footers, which are not light whatsoever, it does get to be kind of tough. But got it all lined up now. Like I said, there's probably a better way to do this, but for this footboard, just have it screwed together up at the top. And since there's no brace in the corner, I'm gonna have to have just a 2x6 or something. I'll throw in kind of like a stud there and screw it together just to give us a little bit of support. Everything else, we have our window. All the windows and doors, it says to put 1 brace on each side. Now I did go 1 web over. Originally I wanted to put it like perfectly like 1 web away from my window cutout. But the more I thought about it, when I put my buck on here, I want to be able to screw it back to this web. So I put my braces 1 web back from the window, and that's on every side. So here's my line for the window. This side, 1 web over there. Same thing with the door. In this case, on that corner, I don't have an extra web, so I'll just have to brace it really well. For the 12-foot posts, in hindsight, I don't know if I could have done this, but since I have a drop footer, I could have used the 8-foot braces, because since this isn't a true 12-foot wall, these braces are sticking out pretty far, and they're more of like a maybe 30-degree angle or 40-degree angle instead, but not really a big deal. Again, these are 8 webs apart, or 5'4", and of course I have all my common seams still to splice up. And one final thing I had to think about here was my 3-foot corner. So I don't know if I necessarily need a brace on my inside 3-foot wall, but I wanted to get one on here just in case. I could have put it on the corner here, but I wanted to be able to control this wall a little bit. So what I ended up doing was put my 3/4 plywood up my common seam first, and since it's only 3/4 plywood, I was able to get the screws all the way through that. Same thing on this side. Have my common seam, and I hit 3 webs on each of these. So I have my half web in the corner, my web there, and then my web on the right. So my common seam is actually in between these two, but I have 3 webs that I was able to tie into just to be able to get some extra support, and I'd rather have a full piece of plywood there just to be safe, since that's kind of a weird common seam in that short wall. The last detail is, again, I made sure all the braces were either 1 turn or so away from the dimple, showing my halfway point, and then each of them is just held in with this standard concrete pin. I think it's a 5/8 pin or so. So each brace has just a concrete pin holding it in, and that should be more than enough to give it an anchor point so I can push these walls in and out. And with that, I only have to cut out my windows and finish the last 3 courses on my walls here now. So I'm 3 courses up on my top footer here, and for a 9-foot basement, these are 18 inches tall each, I'm gonna need 6 courses. Well guys, we've been making some good progress. We have another course on. Just started our 5th course, which of course we're going to include this internal brick ledge. So before I get too far ahead, I want to just go over this detail because the internal brick ledge really isn't too common that I've seen. So just wanted to show you guys how I did it, see if there's any improvements, but this will at least give you an idea of what to expect if you're going to be attempting an internal brick ledge. So for this 8-inch brick ledge, you actually get the front piece, the back piece separated, and then the webs come separate. So the package only has the front and back, and then you have to insert the webs. It's not like the straight pieces that fold out or the corners. So they just come in their own separate pieces, and then you have to put whatever size web you need. So this is what I'm working with. So for this wall, 16 feet over, 8 feet that way. This is will be like kind of like a safe room with a concrete roof over it. So I wanted to have this internal brick ledge to support the concrete pad I'm going to pour on the roof here. Basically, this will just be like a fireproof, weatherproof, hurricane-proof, whatever room in the house. Even though the whole basement is already concrete, this will kind of be like its own little shelter back here. So to do that, I have to have the braces on first. That way, whenever I put my brick ledge on, I had to cut out for the braces. I really couldn't think of any other way to do this. So if you guys have any ideas, definitely leave it in the comments. I'd like to know more. But I came off this corner, so we had a short corner over here, and started my brick ledge. This was a full 8-foot piece, and I had 2 braces in it. So I just did, the brace itself is part of the 2-inch web, which is here, and then I just went 1 extra 2-inch like vertical line cut on each side of it. That way I had enough room for a little bit of wiggle room. And then it's 2x6, because this looks like it sticks out about 5 inches from the main face here. So 2x6 fits perfectly. And you can see I kind of just toenailed in, hit 2 ribs on all of these studs, and then I either toenailed in or side screwed like this one, whatever I could. That way they're nice and strong. And then just looking from the top, you can see how this all goes together. So we have our 2 2x6s. So that keeps concrete from flowing out this way. So it'll stop right here at this 2x6. And then on the inside, I have a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's face screwed to these 2x6s. So when you set something up like this, you should always be thinking about, how can I remove this after the pour? Like, is this going to be removable after the pour? And in this case, I couldn't think of a better way to do it, but with these screw heads being in the concrete, because concrete will be on this side, I'll have to take the planks off, take the braces down, and then unscrew my 2x6s, and then this whole piece will come out as one piece, the 2x6s and the 3/4 plywood. That's the only way I can think to do it. There's probably a better way, but if you guys know, just feel free to leave it in the comments. Also have my one screw for the brace. I don't know if you can see that. So that just holds this course in with the alignment system. And same thing over here where I have my doorway. My doorway, I'll have my jamb here anyway. So that's why this 3/4 piece of plywood's here, just to kind of help keep concrete from going this way. So like I said, this was about what I came up with. Again, this was just another corner piece. I did end up cutting this corner a little bit shorter, just so I can fit a little bit of support here. Like I get two webs of support basically from this brick ledge. That way, if I had used the full corner, I only had like one little piece. I probably could have cut this back even a little bit more, but this is plenty. You know, this will be good support. And then this end over here, the brick ledge ends at 8 feet, and then it'll tie into a wall that goes out into the floor, and then 90's over. So there'll actually be another either concrete or block wall. I'm not sure which I'm going to go with yet, but then the concrete pad will get poured on top of this, and then there'll be one more course of ICFs on top of this, so 18 inches, and then the truss sit on top of that. So I'll still be able to crawl on top of this concrete roof if I have to. I'll have 18 inches of clearance, plus I'll have the 19.2 inch space between the trusses if I need to. That way I can get to plumbing and electrical or anything else I might need. The concrete won't be like almost touching the truss floor. So that's one way to do it. Like I said, there's probably better, but just wanted to show this detail before I started moving on with the rest of this 5th course. And the final course, of course, we will have our taper top pieces along the front there and along that wall on that side, just to keep our porch as a 0 clearance entrance. So I'll go over that detail when we get to that. But for now, I'm just going to finish off the straight blocks on this course and see if we can finish up today. Well guys, we were able to make great progress on the blocks throughout the last couple days and nights. And I did make a mistake the other night where I actually cut above the windows and doors where I normally was, just because I was used to that. But for this top course, the height actually worked out to where the top course could go in as a whole block and we would still meet our window height requirements. So if you look to see across all of our front, our man door, 4-foot window, French door, 5-foot window, all the tops are the exact same height. That way, when you look at this, all the trim will be basically coplanar, collinear with each other across the top. Now the bottoms change. So I was able to get a full block for the 4-foot window, full block for the 6-foot window, and about a 1/4 block or 1/3 of a block for the 5-foot window there. So now that we have all the blocks up, I have all the rebar in, and I have our stiffeners in the very top course as well. The next thing we need to shift our focus to is getting our tops exactly level and kind of in plane with itself, because there might be a little bit of imperfections across the top, and I want to make where the sill meets the concrete as level and flat as possible. The other thing we have to worry about are the penetrations coming through the wall here. So since I did my whole back wall as concrete, we're going to have some sconce lights above the doors. We'll have some outlets, and we're going to have a hose bib somewhere in here just to have water. And all those things are going to be easier now to sleeve and then add in later. So I don't want to be drilling through the concrete or rebar later. So we'll put sleeves in for all that. Also, we have our normal things like our sewage, our basement drain to daylight, a couple other utilities that will be sleeved and through the wall for this. And of course, I'll even throw in a couple extras just for future proofing and having some access to places in the basement later on. In addition to that, we'll also have our window lintels and our window bucks to worry about. So for the last thing, we have our window bucks. So this will be our lintel table for the windows. So Nudura provides this. It's about a 50-page document. It goes through all the different engineering on it and kind of specifications. The two tables we're looking at in our case are the general layout here. So here's our window lintel schedule. So at the bottom you can see we're going to have 2 number 4 bars at the bottom of each window, 1 number 4 bar 1.5 inches from the top of the window, and then our standard bar at the top of that course like we've been putting up every course. Now the bottom bar isn't necessarily 1/2 inch. So when you have compression coming down on top of this lintel, all your tension is going to be at the bottom as it wants to bend up like this. So the bottom bar is based on a table, an engineered table. In my case, that's going to be this table for an 8-inch thick wall, which is what we're doing, and we're 18 inches deep because we have 1 full block before my trusses sit on it. So we have a uniform distributed load, and an engineering drawing should be able to tell you these values, but for my case, since I did the calculations in the design myself, I went with just a swag on this, and since I'm designing for 60 PSF total, that's 20 dead load and 40 live load pounds per square foot in my area, I'm combining those, so 60 PSF, and I'm looking at worst case, so 60 PSF over the entire span of my 16-foot wall and my 20-foot wall gets me, in the 16-foot wall case, 960 pound-foot, and in the case of the 20-foot wall, 1,200 pound-foot. And I'm just going to put a safety factor of 2 in there and double it, so we have 2,400 pound-feet for the 6-foot wall, or 6-foot door here on my 20-foot wall, and 920 pound-feet for my other windows and doors. So if we look at our chart, we have a 3-foot man door. We come over here. If I'm going for 2,000, well, 1,920 pound-feet, but I'm going to go 2,000. It's a number 4 bottom bar with 0 stirrup end distance. Now the stirrup end distance, if you look at this chart, is these vertical bars that actually hold the bottom bar in place from the top bar. So 0 stirrup bars means we don't need any like moving in. We can just put 1 on each end of the window or strap it somehow. The only time that changes, of course, we have our 4-foot window next to the man door, our 5-foot window on our other 16-foot wall, but we have our 6-foot French door opening, and that's our 2,400 pound-foot distributed load. So we come over here to 2,500 pounds, and we have 1 number 6 bar, an end distance for the stirrups of 20 inches. So in that case, we need this bottom bar to be number 6, so 3/4 bar, and then 20 inches from the end of the window is where our stirrups end. And if you look at the notes somewhere on here, I believe it's this sheet, our stirrup spacing is 8 inches. So we have our stirrup on the end, and then 8, 16, 24. So we'll have 6 stirrups on this window holding up that 3/4 inch rebar at 8-inch spacing. So I noticed on these stirrups, I need it to be about 14 or 15 inches from inside radius to inside radius where it's actually holding the rebar, so I get it in the right place in the block. So if I cut a piece about 22 to 23 inches, put my bar right on the end, I can make my first hook pretty easily. So it gets me like a J. And then you can do it as an S where the bar goes down, or a C where a bar goes down, or an S where it comes back. In the case of my bender here, it's easier to do the C stirrup because I don't really have room to flip this over or it hits the 2x8 here. Measure from my radius here to 14 inches, which is where I want it. And then as long as I put that mark about 3 or 4 inches back from where it's bending, because as I bend it, it actually pulls that mark through. It makes it shorter. So ideally, I'm getting that mark right in the middle of my bend here. A little bit off on that one, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So you can see my mark, not quite at the bottom of the radius, but really close. And when I measure this, basically, this one's about 13 inches. So this will be my stirrup for holding that number 3 bar. Okay, so we're here at our back 20-foot wall with our 6-foot wide opening for the French door. And again, if you look at the spec sheet, it calls for a number 6 bar on the bottom, and we have our number 4 bar at the top for the standard course. And I have all my stirrups here. So this number 6 bar, it's going to extend 2 feet past the door on each side, and it's going to be 1.5 inches above our door jamb, or the actual like wood we put in the door here. So I'm going to stick this number 6 bar in here, kind of get it set in place. Okay, take 2 on this. So I had to remake my stirrups because my center to center distance was only 12 inches, and it actually needed to be closer to like 15 or 16. So these are about 15.5 now. So let's see if this will actually be enough to catch this rebar without hitting our web. Okay, so this is now what we want to see. Much better this time. So this is our 1/2 inch piece that's going to come across the top. We have our stirrup going down that holds our 3/4 inch rebar, and it's basically going to be just holding it up enough to be about 1.5 inches above our window opening down here. So we'll get the rest of these stirrups in, and then I'll show you guys how that looks. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to mention is the first stirrup distance is S/2, stirrup over 2. So since our spacing was 8 inches, the first one will be 4 inches, and then 8, 8, 8. So this is pretty much what the finished product looked like. I actually have my stiffener back in here, as well as tied the rebar a little bit. So we have our 2 number 4 rebar vertical on the sides, about 1.5 to 2 inches away from our window opening. We have our 3 stirrups. This will be S/2 from the edge, so 8 divided by 2, which is 4 inches from the edge, and then 8 inch spacing, 8 inch spacing, 1/2 inch on the top for this one, number 6 3/4 bar on the bottom for just this opening. The other ones will be just 1/2 inch. And then on the other side, same thing, our 3 stirrups, and our 1/2 inch bar on the top extends 2 feet past our opening. Our 3/4 bar extends 2 feet past our opening. All the other bar is recessed in about 1/2 inch to 2 inches. So this is how I'll do all the other openings. So I'll have probably just 1 stirrup on each side, since it's 0 for that stirrup end distance. That'll just hold it in place, and it'll be the same 1.5 to 2 inches up out of where the actual window buck will be. So I'm gonna get these other doors and windows finished up, and then we'll go move on to the stirrups for the brick ledge. All right, guys, so now we've been on to our window bucks. So now that I have all the lintels installed and we have our upper and lower rebar, we're going to put in our wood for the actual buck of the window. Now there's multiple ways to do this. There was like some metal brackets supplied by the ICF manufacturer that you can slide wood in and out. Those were pretty expensive. If you have a 6-inch wide ICF, you can get away with using a 2x12 and just using 1 board. But since I'm using an 8-inch ICF, my overall width from inside to outside is 13.25. 2x14 material is available, but it's very expensive. Same thing if I would use an LVL, that's it's just so expensive. And one method I saw online that I really liked was this method where you have a 2x4, both treated, and we beveled it 45 degrees on the inside, and then we put 3/4 treated plywood on the inside. So these pieces of 2x4, this treated 2x4, will actually stay in the concrete forever. The plywood will be on the outside. It'll be changeable, but it'll stay on the outside indefinitely as well. So this is one of our doors. We did the same thing for our 5.0 window and our 4.0 window, and I needed some more wood to finish up the other door. But for now, we're gonna get these 3 installed, and you can see our bottoms are actually open. That way we can put the concrete in, and then I'll put a piece of 1/2 inch or 3/4 plywood on top of that later. But if you measure from corner to corner inside the plywood, that is going to be our true rough opening. So when I was cutting the foam, I had to account for this 1.5 inches on this side for this 2x4, 1.5 inches for the other 2x4, and 1.5 inches for both pieces of plywood. So an extra 4.5 inches onto the rough openings for the windows and doors. Well, it's good to start with the smallest one. All right, let's just set the bottom one in there and we'll pivot it right up. Then we'll adjust as needed.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
All right?
I'm good, yeah. I knew I was getting close. You just pushed me that little bit to
Not bad.
to knock me off. All right, you good? What are we hitting up there? Oh, my rebar's in the way. Can you hold it for a second?
I got it.
Okay, can you tip it in here anymore? Oh, sorry, hold on 1 second. Looks like this one piece of rebar is a little in the way. Okay. There we go.
There we go. I'm good.
Yep, perfect.
Perfect.
Nice.
Wow, you can't do better than that.
Yeah, that worked out well. You know what? This is going to need a bottom on this side. The other one's not going to need a bottom.
Huh?
The other one's not going to need a bottom, but this one will. I forgot about the drop footer. Oops.
There you go.
Yeah. Oops. Okay, we're good?
Beautiful.
Nice. That wasn't too bad.
I do that wrong.
No, I think we're all right.
I think we're gonna come out.
We're gonna hit that rebar when we get it. Slide your side out so we can just go in straight. Okay. Then I'm gonna have to move that rebar again, just like the other side.
I got it.
You got it? You're right anymore? I guess not. Oh, there you go.
All right, I'm good down.
Yeah, nice. I'm good here.
You're good to go here,
Oh. Yep, that'll work. Nice. Oops. Cool. Looks good. Well, guys, we've been working day and night to get this finished because today is concrete day. So I got a little bit behind whenever I was doing some of the strapping and a few of the other small details. So I'm going to go through pretty much what we have done now, and then we'll be ready for the pump truck to be here in about an hour, and then concrete about a half an hour after that. So I think last time we left you guys, we were just getting these door frames in. So we were able to get the door jambs in, all the window bucks and door bucks. Everything is now strapped. We have at least 1 to 2 straps on all of our common seams. All of our windows were as square and as plumb as I could get them as a rough opening. And of course our doors, we put this bottom in just for now, but this is temporary. So these bottoms will come out and then the concrete will be poured 7 inches higher. One mistake I did make was I didn't quite adjust these doors to the right height. They should have been about 1 inch higher. So instead of a rough opening being 82 like I wanted, a rough opening for the doors is about 81 to 81.5. So we'll have to make do with that. Hopefully doesn't make it too much harder to put the doors in later. So you can see we have our other door, our other 5.0 window here, and I actually put some bracing left to right and up and down just to help with that. Another common seam. We also have some penetrations coming out of the foundation. So these are all sleeves. This will be a hose bib, like a frost-free hose bib. Will slide right in there. That's just 1 inch electrical conduit, and everything acts as a sleeve. That's just a bonus 3-inch sleeve for if I want water to this side of the house or something later on. So now we'll just jump inside real quick because we have done a lot of work the last couple nights trying to prepare for this. So I have some other braces on this side one, didn't have those on yet to keep them out of the way. All the walls have been plumbed to where the center is actually leaning in about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. That way, as the concrete fills the cavity, it'll lean back on the brace. I know I saw on Dirt Perfect's video, you want to lean it back on the brace because these can push a lot, but they can't pull against the screws. So it's important to have that little bit of camber to it. Since we don't have power up here, we have little generator setup, a vibrator with an 11-foot end on it, and we'll basically just be going around the perimeter and vibrating the concrete in lifts. So we'll do about 3 feet at a time, and should make about 4 to 5 laps around this foundation. So string lines are up on every straight wall. So this is our string line from that corner, and I just went straight through all the way to that corner. And it's probably hard to tell on camera, but there's our little curve in on each of these walls. Another unique detail for this wall is I'm doing a 0 entrance front porch and garage. So for the whole width of the front porch here, there's 20 foot across the top. I actually have almost like a stepped foundation here. So this will be the top of our foundation where the truss sits. We have a truss that's 16 inches tall that'll come up, and then this piece will be like a little ledge. And if I can find a drawing or something, I'll try to show what that detail looks like. But basically this is 6 inches wide. These will get 12-inch anchor bolts that stick up 5 inches to go through the bottom plate, the subfloor, and then the bottom plate of the actual wall. And basically that'll give me a whole concrete wall here. And when I pour the front porch, I'll be pouring up against concrete rather than the 16-inch tall face of the trusses. And I think that'll be better long-term to keep moisture and stuff out of the trusses. And then of course I did the same thing for my garage, my breezeway entrance over there. And just going around, the last detail I can think of is we have beam pockets. So this is for a W8 by 15 beam. They're about 4.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches deep. That's a little bit bigger than the beam. I think the beam is 4 by 8 roughly. So that'll give me a little bit of wiggle room. There's one here. It'll span all the way across to that one. Same thing from that corner to that corner. So that pretty much is wrapping up all the setup we've done. So like I said, the last couple days have just been trying to keep up with all the little strapping. Like I greatly underestimated just how much lumber it was going to take to strap all this and do all the cross bracing. It took like way more time than I thought, maybe like 12 hours of labor versus like the 2 or so that I thought. So that made a big deal, made a big difference. Just aligning all the windows and doors, like making the bucks wasn't too bad, but I was trying to get them pretty much as perfect as possible for square and plumb, just to make sure I make it as easy as possible later to get these in. I guess the last thing is I foamed every common seam and every little hole, nook and cranny that I could find. So everything I can think of is foamed. And if we come over here to this side of the house, on the south side, we have a few more penetrations to go through. So down at the bottom, we have our water coming in, so that's 36 inches deep. And then right above that will be gas, so that'll be 2 feet deep. And then we have a 5-inch diameter conduit there, electrical conduit. That is a sleeve for a 4-inch Schedule 40 piece of PVC, so that'll be our septic out. And then we have a 3-inch schedule, 3-inch sleeve here, Schedule 40, and that's basically just our floor drains here in the basement. Will go out in a 2-inch line, and it'll just follow the same trench as our French drain there. I tried to keep all the penetrations on the exterior walls on this side because this is a gable side, so there's less load. This side is carrying the weight of our trusses, so our trusses come down and they'll be bearing a lot of weight on this wall. So not really that big of a deal because I already have the window and door here taking up a lot of that load. And anything I can keep out of the foundation though for the load bearing side is just a benefit. So the truck should be here in about an hour. We have roughly 45 yards calculated, so I have 50 yards coming, and we have one of the overhead pumps with an 80-foot reach, so that'll be exciting. I've never actually got to use one of those kind of pumps before, so I'm excited for that. And we'll get this 50 yards pumped out and then hopefully have no surprises with this foundation. Well, I'll catch up with you guys when the truck's here. Well guys, that's a wrap. We just finished up finishing the tops, hitting them with the float one more time. So everything went really, really well with the actual forms. We had no issues at all. Everything went really smoothly. We had one, not blowout down here, but it was just a joint I forgot underneath the door jamb there. It was about a 1-inch gap that I forgot to fill with the foam or anything else. So we had a little bit of spill there, maybe about 3 shovelfuls or so before we caught it. Other than that, it was perfect. No leaks, no blowouts. All my walls and windows held up really well. You see our finish on the top, not perfect. Wish I could have got a little bit smoother, but it was difficult to get around all my J bolts. I have my bolts every 4 feet on center and 2 feet between splices, or 1 foot between splices and 1 foot on the corners. Also wanted to mention this detail here for my front porch here. I used, instead of snap ties, these tiebacks or whatever you call them. Found these at the store instead of strong holdback ties. So it's just a little washer with a bolt. This goes through, and then there's actually a cap on the other side I don't have with me, but there's a little cap that holds this. That just kept my bottom from kind of moving out, since I had the top strapped, but I didn't have a way to hold the bottom. So those worked really well for this application. This is only a 16-foot wall. You know, I just had about every 4 feet. So we are done. The foundation is done. We just have to strip all the forms and clean up again, and we'll be ready to move on to the next step. The bad news, whatever I learned from the process here, is completely underestimated how much work is going to be involved after the blocks are up. So once the blocks are up, there's still so much labor with cutting, the strapping, screwing them together. I mean, I think alone I have probably $200 worth of screws in this thing, just trying to get everything tied together and all the hardware. You want to make sure that your alignment systems are very well staked down. Some of mine, it was difficult to move because it was actually pushing the stakes over a little bit. So you got to really drive those down, and that way the stakes don't move. We did 3 lifts total. So the first lift and second lift, and then we topped out on the third lift. But between the second and the top out lift is when we actually did all the alignment. And of course my time-lapse camera overheated, so I didn't get a full time-lapse, but my friends John and Jennifer were here. They got some video, so that was lucky that they were able to get some of that. Worst part of the process, we had some bad luck with the batch plant. So I guess something with their system was going down, and we had to wait about 30 to 40 minutes between trucks. And it was just enough time to where we started in that corner. The first truck, we made it about to this wall. And by the time we got around again with the third truck after about 2 hours, the bottom course was already setting up. Even with 1% retarder in this concrete, we had poor consolidation. So it was hard to get consolidated because that first course was already set up pretty far at that point. And then after our 3 trucks, we were supposed to get 2 more, but unfortunately the batch plant actually went down completely. So had to scramble to find 2 more trucks, and luckily the guy who I had pumping for me came through, and he has some good connections with another concrete company, and they were able to send 2 trucks after hours, which was super lucky that they were able to find them. And we got the whole 50 yards poured and didn't have any more problems after that. But still, I don't think it'll be too big of an issue because we have tons of rebar in here, but unfortunately there's a lot of consolidation problems with the first couple courses here. I know if this was like a pour in place wall, like where you were stripping the forms, I know it would be kind of ugly in there. Structurally, you know, they have a lot of rebar, but of course, you know, that could leave more risk for water penetration if the water would ever get past the membrane and stuff like that. So things happen. You just got to keep moving and kind of deal with things as it comes up. You know, it's just part of the process. So we'll move on to the next step and hopefully get the garage footers and stem wall poured next, and then we'll have some framing done. So it'll really start looking like a house after that. But for now, I'm calling this one good. As always, you can check the description below for all the costs and what it ended up being for this part of the project in total, and all the other part of the house projects that I have a running total of the whole build so far. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.